Are you curious about the weather in Richland, Washington? Well, then hang around and you'll learn what to expect from the year-round weather here in Richland, Washington. I'm not a meteorologist by any means, so take this all with a grain of salt. This is just me digging up data and then also my perception of the area after living here for a couple years. So what I've done is broken up the weather into the 4 seasons. So what we're going to do is talk about winter, spring, summer, and fall. Within those seasons, what I'm going to do is break it up into the different categories of weather that a lot of people look out before going out. And those 4 categories are temperature, precipitation, wind, and sunshine. So I'll put the worst first. I'll start off with the season that most people dread the most, which is winter. So as far as winter temperatures go, it is a desert out here in Richland. So a lot of people think of a really hot summer, but the desert does also bring cold winters, which a lot of people aren't aware of. So what that means is in the kind of middle of winter in December and January, you can expect to see highs in like the low 40s or the 40s somewhere, and then daily average lows somewhere around 28 degrees or below freezing. So what that means is you are going to get some sunshine, it's going to warm up and thaw things during the day on average, but then you will also see temperatures drop below freezing at nighttime. A hot day in the wintertime is usually anything in the 60s, so if you do see those days in the forecast where it's supposed to be 61, 62, 63, definitely get out and take advantage of it because they're few and far between. I would say we usually only see days in the 60s maybe once per month in the wintertime. When it comes to winter precipitation, December and January are definitely the wettest months, and actually the wettest months of the year. They each average about 5 days of rainfall and an inch of rainfall per month. Then when we look at February, you're looking at a little bit less. February averages about 4 days of rainfall and about 3/4 of an inch of rain. For comparison, throughout the winter, somewhere like Seattle, which is considered quite rainy, averages 14 days of rainfall and 5 inches of average rainfall per month. So you're looking at about 5 times the rainfall of the months in the Tri-Cities, and then about 3 times as many days of rain. Winter is also the only season that consistently sees snow, although it can still happen in like November and March, and very rarely in October and April. On average, each of the months receives about 2 inches of snowfall per year. Now obviously that can vary, sometimes it'll dump 6 inches or a foot or a couple feet, but when you look at it kind of the long-term average, it is around 2 inches of snowfall per month per year. And that's usually spread out across 1 or 2 days of snowfall. It's not often you see it like long stretches of snow where it's consistent. The most interesting thing to talk about in Tri-Cities, and when I say interesting, I mean dangerous, is actually the freezing rain that we receive in the wintertime. So that tends to be more of a hazard for the roads than the, say, snowfall does. What will happen is that it'll be freezing rain, it'll settle when it's cold and the ground is below freezing, and it kind of instantly freezes into a layer of ice and sometimes black ice. So that can be really tricky as far as driving goes, especially for people who live up on a hill and either need to drive up or down that hill. Always important to have good winter tires for the winter time, even if you don't need them per se that often. The times when you do need them, they are obviously really important. Although the winter doesn't technically fall in the windy season, as it's traditionally described, the beginning of December can see periods with extremely high speed winds. So although the average wind speed in the winter months is significantly lower than other months, the beginning of December specifically, we do see some pretty high wind speeds historically. As far as the daily average wind speeds, they average somewhere around 7 miles per hour throughout the winter, which is pretty middle of the road for Richland. Now, for obvious reasons, the winter is the least sunny of any of the seasons in both categories. So it averages only 16 days of sunshine per month and less than 5.5 hours of sunshine per day. So a lot of the times that's why people really dislike winter. It's not as much to do with the cold as it is the lack of sunshine and the shorter days. So for people who don't like either end of the spectrum as far as being really hot or really cold, spring is definitely one of the favorite times of the year for you folks. It's known to have like moderate and reasonable temperatures. Other places may consider it a shoulder season because somewhere like Seattle, where it's really wet and rains a lot in the spring, you're not going to be able to go out inside and do as much because the ground's soggy and wet, so you can't golf or play a lot of outdoor sports just because of the conditions. But somewhere like Richland that's very dry, once the temperatures start warming up, you can get out and do a lot of those activities because the ground isn't so saturated and wet, and it really allows you to get out and enjoy the nice days in the springtime when the temperature does start to rise up. With spring being a swing season and obviously going from winter to summer, you start out with temperatures that are significantly lower than how they end. So obviously March has got a lot colder temperatures, and by the time you get to May, they are significantly higher, and it's almost like a completely different time of year. So average daily highs start in the 50s in March and they end in the 70s by the time you hit May. So like a 20-degree swing from in those 2 to 3 months. So hot days as far as like March, April, and May are concerned would be like high 70s, high 80s, and then high 90s respectively. And I say hot because you're not going to see a lot of days in May that are the high 90s, but you do see them get up there. And same with March. Don't expect it to be high 70s very often, but when you do get those days that are up there, make sure to get out and take full advantage. Spring is the second wettest season of the year in Richland, second behind winter, averaging about 3 to 4 days of rainfall per month and about a half-inch total rainfall per month. Occasionally you do see snow into March and even sometimes on the odd occasion into April, but it is a lot more rare than seeing it in obviously the winter months. Last year we actually saw snow on April 11th, which I believe is the latest anyone can remember having snowfall in Richland. Now, wind in the springtime in Richland is definitely a big factor given that spring falls right in the middle of the windy season, which runs from February until June. So spring is consistently the windiest time of the year. These months average about 8-mile-per-hour daily wind speeds, which is the highest that we see across a period of months consistently. And then about 1 out of every 10 days, we see high wind speeds up, like averaging kind of 11 to 14 miles per hour or above. Some people might be surprised to hear that the spring is actually the third sunniest season in Richland as far as days of sunshine per month, but it is the second sunniest season as far as actual hours of sunshine per day when you average it out. So in March, you're looking at about 15 days of sunshine per month on average, and then that gets up to about 20 days of sunshine per month in May. And then as a whole, the springtime average is about 10 hours of sunshine per day when you look from March to May. So obviously you're going to be seeing a lot more hours of sunshine in May than you would in March. So unless you're really adverse to high temperatures and you don't like the heat at all, summertime is definitely most people's favorite time of year here in Richland, Washington. Summertime in Richland is definitely hot, both literally and figuratively, given that the temperatures rise and then there's also just so many activities and so much going on that one kind of follows the other, and it's a great time of year to be in Richland. Average high temperatures in June are around 82 degrees, while once you get to July and August, over 90 degrees is your average daily high temperature, which is just awesome for people who love the heat. As far as low temperatures, like I mentioned previously, it is the desert, and you do get those swings both in seasonally and from daytime to nighttime. So in June, you're looking at average lows around 57 degrees, and then once you get to July and August, your average lows are up to 65 degrees. So even the nighttime is fully comfortable, and most people can be out there in t-shirt and shorts even at night. It is important to note that between those 3 months, any of the months can see a real kind of hot spell come through. So June's record high temperature is 112 degrees, while both July and August have tied for 113 degrees, which is the highest recorded day on record in Richland, Washington. So being the summertime in the desert, as far as precipitation goes, June averages only about 2 days of rain, 1 to 2 days of rainfall, and about a half inch of rain per month, while both July and August average 1 day of rainfall per month each and a quarter inch or less of rainfall per month each. So you're looking at very dry months where there's not a lot of natural rainfall, and any of the beautiful plants and vegetation you see around are definitely sustained via man-made irrigation systems. So the first half of summer does fall into the windy season. You're looking at about the first 5 weeks from the beginning of June to early July are technically part of that windy season. So you're looking in June, average wind speeds daily about 8 miles per hour, and then they fall down to like the 7 mile per hour range for July and August. By the time you get to July and August, you don't see many days where the wind gets up over like 25 or 30 miles per hour. It does happen, they're still there, but during those months, you definitely don't see nearly as many of those really windy days that kind of people think about when they think of Richland and the Tri-Cities. Now, when people think of summer, they often think of sunshine at the same time, and Richland is definitely no exception to that rule. There is no shortage of sunshine in the summer in Richland. If anything, it's almost too much for people, and you got to focus on ways to kind of find shade and figure out how to keep yourself out of the sun because there's so much of it. The 3 summer months average about 24 days of sunshine per month each, and then average about 12 hours of sunshine per day. So you're looking at a lot of sunshine, a lot of time to spend outside if you want to. It's really a fantastic time of year for people who love the sun and the heat, and honestly why a lot of people move to Richland. Obviously work and other things bring people there, but that summer weather is absolutely fantastic. Fall time in Richland feels very similar to spring, except in reverse. So in spring, where you see kind of a very slow buildup from the winter to the summertime, fall you see a pretty drastic drop off. So it's great in September, temperature's still warm, you get all that daylight, it feels much like summertime. But then through October and into November, there's a very significant transition where you kind of, all facets of the weather change very rapidly. So we'll get into that now. I will say, as an honorable mention, September is honestly my favorite month of the year in Richland, and probably a lot of people's. The combination of moderate temperatures, low wind, you still get lots of daylight and lots of days of sunshine, as well as very limited rain. It just makes for an amazing time of year where almost every day you can be outside enjoying the outdoors and not have to worry about it being too hot or too cold. The one downside is there is occasionally forest fires in the fall in areas in BC, Oregon, California, where the smoke will blow in and cause a lot of smoke. But aside from that, as far as the weather itself goes, it's a great time of year to spend time outdoors. Like I mentioned previously, the average high temperatures in the fall, they start in the low 80s in September, and then they fall down to around 50 degrees by the time you hit November. So you're looking at a 30-degree swing in 2 to 3 months. And then similarly, the average daily lows start in the high 50s in September and fall to the high 30s by November. So those nighttime temps, you're looking at like a 20-degree swing from September to November. When we're looking at the hottest days in the months, you can still see high 90s in September, and then you're looking at like high 80s in October and high 70s in November. Those are truly the hottest days, though I wouldn't expect more than one of those a month, if that. The first freeze isn't usually until November, as far as once we see those low temperatures start dipping below the freezing mark, although they can occur in October. I believe the lowest temperature on record in September is like 30 degrees, so very, very rare to see temperatures drop below freezing until we get at least into early to mid-October. Another big transition we see is the precipitation in the fall. So September is very similar to the end of the summer, where you're seeing about averaging 1 day of rainfall and about a 1/4 inch of rain in September. And then by the time we get to November, you're looking at 5 days of rainfall per month on average and up to 1 inch of total rainfall. So really September resembles the summer months as far as precipitation goes. And then November really represents and correlates to the winter months. So again, there's that transition period that we see in the fall. Wind in the fall, starting in September, you're seeing less than 7 miles per hour of average daily wind, which is the least of any month throughout the year. So by the end of November, you're starting to see 1 or 2 or occasionally some really windy days and some windstorms where you get wind speeds exceeding like 50 miles per hour. As I mentioned in the winter segment, you see that end of November, start of December. So the fall isn't traditionally the windy season completely all the way through, but by the end of the fall, you do definitely get some very windy days into November. Although the numbers are there to support it, people may not notice the transition as much in the fall as far as the wind and the precipitation goes, but what they definitely notice is one, the temperature, which we talked about, and the other one is the sunshine and the daylight. So in September, you're seeing 24 days on average of sunshine per month and averaging about 11 hours of sunshine per day, so very much still feels like summertime. And then by the time you get all the way to November, you're down to 17 average days of sunshine and less than 7 hours of sunshine per day. So even by the time you've hit November, the average in November, it very much feels like winter as far as the amount of daylight because of the changing seasons. So did you learn what you were hoping to about the weather in Richland, Washington? If so, please hit that subscribe button down below and that bell for notifications so you'll get notified anytime I release new information about the Tri-Cities and Richland area specifically. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see y'all again next time.